Pixel Therapy is a member of the But Why Though podcast network.
Go to butwhythoughpodcast.com for an inclusive geek community offering pop culture news, reviews, and podcasts.
The theme of this game, of it being kind of guiding a spirit to reach a peaceful end, like that is so important, and I think it's so prominent in Balinese culture. And Balinese culture and Balinese music go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And so I think because of those themes, of it being about the community, about giving back, is just resonates so well with what Gamelan means and Gamelan, what Gamelan does in the community, right? It brings people together and it gives back to the community.
Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. Every week we bring on a guest who may or may not consider themselves a gamer to discuss the games that have made them and changed them, and all the feelings they have about our favorite pastime. I'm your co-host Jamie, pronouns she, her.
And I'm your co-host Spencer, pronouns they, them.
And this is Pixel Therapy. It is time for our Patreon monthly shout out.
Woo-woo!
This is our special thank you to the fine folks who subscribed at the name in the credits tier or above on patreon.com/pixeltherapypod. For support during the month of August, we are giving an extra special thank you to Val and Genevieve. Thank you so much, Val and Genevieve. Huge thank you to you both for your support of Pixel Therapy. If you want to get your name in the credits, head over to the Pixel Therapy Patreon, where you can check out all of our perks and get access to a monthly bonus episode for just $2 a month. In the August bonus episode, we chatted about Spencer's new Xbox, our general gaming feels, and all the games that came out this year that we wish we had the time to get back to. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, then just pop on over to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod and sign up for only $2 today. And if that's not in the cards for you, it does help to rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you write us a review, we may just have to read it on the show sometime. But no matter how you choose to support, just remember that Spencer and I are so happy to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's time to get cozy. Pull up an armchair. Feel free to lie down on the couch. Let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, what's up with you today?
So, if anyone knows what a snake hole looks like, shoot us an email, because I found a mysterious hole in my yard this week.
Oh, no.
My partner put a rock over it, but then we took it off because we were like, oh, what if, I don't know, even if it's a snake, it would be sad if they came home and they can't get back in. But there's this mysterious hole. It's like small. It's only like the width of maybe like 3/4 put next to each other, but then it goes like really deep and like it turns off to the side. So I just don't know.
That sounds like a snake hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do they dig that? Do they just like spin around really fast in the hole? Like, how do they do that?
That's a good question that I've never actually Googled, but that sounds like a snake hole as someone who grew up in the country and we had snake holes in the yard.
If anyone knows how snakes make a hole, like,
I really never thought about it, but it's such a good point, right? They don't have hands. They don't have they don't have little diggers.
They just have a little mouth. What do I do?
Oh God, yeah. Are they like taking bites of dirt and spitting it out?
Pooping it out? I don't know.
I want to see a snake spit out a mouthful of something.
Speaking of snakes, we want to talk about the God of War Ragnarok trailer.
Yeah. I love that transition.
I was working on my transitions. Was that good?
That was good. Yeah. I thought that was good. Everyone write in, let us know if you liked Spencer's snake hole to Jormungandr transition.
Thank you. Yes. Snake hole to Jormungandr transition. Yes. Anyway, sorry, just to give the people context if you aren't clued into PlayStation news like we are with a direct IV. Last week was what they call it? Was it a showcase?
Yeah, it was a Sony showcase. 40 minutes of new game trailers and release dates and all that fun stuff.
We got a very sexy God of War Ragnarok trailer, direct sequel to 2018 God of War, starring old man Kratos. Well, he's not that old. Middle-aged Kratos.
They call him old man Kratos.
Old man Kratos and his son Atreus / Can we spoil it at this point? Or is it?
Did they say it in the trailer?
Ooh, that's a good point. Never mind. What are we talking about? Who knows?
Who knows? Go play God of War 2018 if you haven't done that yet, and then you'll know what we were just hinting at there.
About. But his son, Atreus, Atreus was what, like 8 or maybe 10 years old in the first game?
Yeah. That sounds right. I think now he's supposed to be like maybe 14 or 15.
14, 15.
That's
so
the vibe
instead
I
of
got.
Boy, he'll be like young man.
Yeah. He definitely seemed like he's starting to be a little bit of a shitty teenager in the trailer. Like, not too shitty. I think he's asking some good questions. And of course, Kratos, not somebody who likes to answer questions, just thinks that everyone should shut up and live their
fight
lives.
Stuff.
Yeah, and shut up and fight stuff. But it seemed like he was asking some good questions, but also just asking them in a little bit of a shitty teenager way.
Yeah, like I can't wait to see that kind of character interaction between like teenager Atreus, who's starting to kind of come into himself and have more of putting his stake in the ground against his father versus being like very much wanting to emulate and please his father in the first game. So I'm just curious to see that tension coming up against Kratos. Like it's like an unstoppable force hitting an immovable object and how that's gonna pan out.
Yeah, Daddy Kratos and his teenage son. It's not going to be a fun dynamic for Kratos, who does not like to have his authority questioned. Yeah. That's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one.
But we got some really exciting character reveals. Tyr, the god of war in Norse mythology. Thor, who god of thunder. We all know Thor. Angrboda, who in the Norse mythology is kind of like Loki's lover. And who else did we get a reveal for?
And we also got Durlin. I'm not sure who Durlin is, but he appeared to be living in an area with Brock and Sindri, or near Brock and Sindri, who are the two dwarf brothers in the original God of War. He seems to be some sort of a shopkeeper of some kind. He's got like a pet squid that doesn't seem to need to be in water. It's like on his shoulder in the drawing that they released afterwards, and in the trailer he like pulls it out of a jar and it's like crawling around on his hand. So
lit.
But then that would be it. We don't really know much about Durlin. We just got a flash of him, whereas I think we heard Thor and Angrboda speak.
And Brock and Sindri are the dwarf brothers who created Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, as well as Kratos' axe that he uses throughout most of the first game. And they're awesome. So I wanted to ask you a little bit of what you thought of, especially the character reveals for Thor and Tyr, because they were big figures that were spoken about throughout the 2018 game that we have very much been built up towards, like who they are. Are they still alive? Like, what are the fan theories around them? And I think so with Thor, like Marvel verse has done a lot to kind of put an idea, at least in like our heads in the past 10 years, about like what Thor looks like, and very like Chris Hemsworth like, but like what's it, sanitized, like heroic, kind of very handsome vibes. Whereas the way Thor is depicted in Legend and in God of War specifically too, it is maybe more nuanced than that, to put it lightly.
I don't know if anything about their character design of Thor is nuanced, but he's very broad shouldered. He's built like a power lifter, so very broad shouldered, thick arms, thick hands. But he's got a kind of a big beer belly. Thor in mythology is known for being quite the partier. But also like very strong. I think in Norse mythology, the whole thing with Mjolnir, it's not what we've come to know of it in the MCU is that you have to be worthy to wield Mjolnir. But I believe in original Norse mythology, it's just that it's heavy as fuck. So you have to be really fucking strong to be able to pick it up. So they've designed him to look more like a power lifter, where he does have very broad, thick shoulders and arms, but a big belly and chest. I think he looks fucking cool as shit. He definitely looks like he could give Kratos a run for his money.
Absolutely, he does. And I think I brought up the nuance thing because I've seen a lot of tweets and just general internet reactions of like, this is the worst Thor depiction I've ever seen, or this is like, he's so ugly, or like, why is he so fat when he's Thor? He's so strong. And I just feel like that was surprising to me because I didn't see a lot of the fan backlash until a couple days after the initial reveal. And all I felt when I saw him was excitement because I was like, wow, this looks like someone who, the way he's described, like someone who loves to drink and party, but also is very strong. Like that's the kind of body type I would expect. And also like, I don't know, like if you like gay bears, I think you'll find a lot to enjoy in Thor. in the Santa Monica God of War Ragnarok depiction of Thor. So I don't know. I guess I didn't really get a lot of the outrage. And I'm excited. I think this character looks like how they're quote unquote supposed to. But I don't know if you had any thoughts on that stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, I love the character design. I think he looks great. I don't even if Sony Santa Monica studio wanted to hew really closely to quote unquote how the characters are supposed to look. These are mythological characters. So really, I personally am really comfortable with them taking them in whatever direction they think is going to be interesting and fit with the characters they're creating. They made it very clear with this franchise from the previous game that this is inspired by Norse mythology and they are drawing from Norse mythology, but this is not necessarily a direct telling of Norse mythology. And I don't necessarily think it should be. I think that's what's cool about exploring mythologies through the God of War series is being able to kind of pull at them and play with them. And Kratos isn't a character that exists in any mythology. So they've inserted him even when they were making the Greek games. And it was always really interesting to see him be inserted into that space and then go from there and play with it and pull at it.
Yeah.
I love that they're doing that. I think the character looks awesome. I think he looks like a badass. I do think he's a little sexy. And like, I can't wait to fucking fight him because I feel very confident that that's going to be an early fight in the game is Thor showing up to their house and asking for revenge for his two sons that Kratos killed in the first game. So
you think we're going to be able to wield Mjolnir as a weapon?
That would be pretty fucking cool to bring the lightning. But I think it's a definite possibility. I think it's a definite possibility.
For that. I guess on that point of mythology and how an interpretation of it can be anything, especially because Kratos, himself is inserted into the Greek pantheon and then wreaks havoc since then. Like, I guess sometimes I'm reminded that I'm not the target audience for these games, even though I feel like people within marginalized groups are sometimes can be like the ones with the most exciting and deep and like big takes on these games and the ones who kind of hold them closest and kind of pick them apart and find things to resonate within them because we have so little, so that we kind of look for subtext and look for symbolism and look for things that are unsaid within these games that don't include us. And I guess I'm just reminded that I'm not actually the target audience for these games, even though I have such a strong emotional connection to them. Just in the sense that like, I still felt like for the most part, it still seems like a very white male kind of like cast and Angrboda and her depiction in the game, she's a Black woman, which I'm very excited about. But even in the trailer, she was kind of like tacked on at the very end for a split second. And I guess in general, I was expecting a little bit more diversity in these new characters just because the first game didn't really have a ton of it. And I know it's supposed to be Norse mythology for whatever reasons people come up with for why everyone's white. I just kind of feel like because of the liberties we're already taking with these legends, like why not go all the way and just like just throw the whatever arbitrary rule book out the window about like what people within this world are quote unquote supposed to look like. I don't know. I guess I keep expecting more and more, especially after I thought that games like like with the Last of Us 2 bringing in, a transgender person of color into a main character role, and all the buzz around like, oh, 2021, we have all this trans representation in games. Like Norse, I think like any story having to do with Loki, like the most gender fluid and like queer, one of the queerest like examples of like a god imaginable. I don't know. I just wanted to see a little bit more of that kind of expansiveness. And I still felt like a little bit underwhelmed in that way. I don't know if you had any of those kinds of thoughts as you were watching the trailer, and if you didn't, that's okay too. I know that I'm maybe biased in terms of what I look for. And I have to remember that like God of War, largely the fan base is like capital G gamers and like guys who, with the original series, it was very much geared towards like a certain kind of gamer. So maybe I'm queering God of War more than it deserves. But like, I don't know.
I think the critiques. I think the critiques that you're leveling are perfectly fair. And I would love to see mainstream games like God of War start moving in these directions to represent a wider variety of people much more quickly.
Yeah.
I would love to see that too. That would be amazing. I think the response that happened even just to the Angrboda reveal and the fact that they made her a black woman, like it's already, the internet has already like come out on fire because of this. And so I think it's, I don't know. I both don't want to be like, we shouldn't be happy with scraps, right? Like this is one small adjustment that they made in a game that, yes, is like almost completely dominated by white men. Mm-hmm. There's one other prominent female character in the game, and who knows how much she'll even feature in the sequel, right? I'm referring to Freya, who was in the first game. I don't know. I don't know how the numbers break down. I don't know how the audience breaks down, but God of War sells a ton of games. Yeah. And it cannot be doing that solely on the backs of just cis white male gamers. Yeah. So there is a large diversity of folks who are playing and enjoying these games. And I think that number is only going to increase as they make the stories more relatable, they make the characters more relatable, and they increase the diversity of the cast and the diversity of the representations they're in. Yeah. So hopefully they're going to keep pushing in that direction. The rumor is that the next mythology is supposed to be Egyptian mythology, which could really break the doors wide open. But absolutely. That's just a rumor right now.
It shouldn't have to be like, oh, we're doing Egyptian mythology now so we can have people of color. It's like, but I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I just want to make sure everyone knows.
Yeah. No, like I do think to some degree, like this game, God of War Ragnarok, they've said that this is going to be the end of the Norse series. Okay. So it's these two games. They made the first game the way they made it, and they created the world that they made. And I think this game feels like they are trying to push a few edges where they can, but they're trying to stay within the lines of what they had already drawn out.
But like, I guess, okay, yes. And like, we never saw what Thor or Tyr looked like in the first game. It was just through like statues and cave drawings. So I guess I kind of was like with Tyr, he's like a tall white man. Yeah. Which I'm fine with. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, we can't have white cis men in games. That's not what I'm saying. And who knows? Maybe Tyr is trans. But I'm just saying like because there was so little, like the door was wide open in terms of how they could have depicted Tyr and Thor. I mean, with gods, there's like people being formed from stone and people jumping out of other people's foreheads. So it's like, I don't even know that the typical rules of like genetics and stuff have to apply. Like their physical forms are just interpretations that can be perceived by like humans. So it's like, does that need to adhere to like race or like genealogy? Like, I don't know that I buy into that. So I guess I'm just saying like with Tyr, I think with how much he was built up in the first game, maybe I was expecting more. And I guess I don't think of someone who builds worlds and stuff as like a white dude, but like, maybe that's just my internal, like, I don't know. I just, like, I'm sure the writing is going to be awesome. I'm very excited for the game. I'm not like poo-pooing the way the game is being put together. I think I think maybe with Tyr specifically, like I didn't really feel like there was anything tying him to any one way of being. And so I was expecting more. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe the fact that he is kind of like smaller, or I mean, he's really tall, like he's taller than Kratos. But the fact that he's kind of like doesn't look super buff, kind of just looks like more like an intellectual than a warrior. Like maybe that's part of, you know, the subversion of our expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've almost all we have to go on with Tyr is the visual. Yeah, that's literally all we've seen, and we don't really know anything else about him. And I do know that, like, following the first game, I know you were like much more on the God of War Reddit than I was, much more like reading. And there were a lot of fan theories and a lot of speculating about Tyr and who he was. I know there was even a theory that Tyr might be Kratos, or that Kratos was going to become Tyr in some fashion. And so I think it's perfectly reasonable to be disappointed. I think it's perfectly reasonable to want to see more diversity from these games.
I just want everything now. You know, I'm like, all right, we all know these games are like cis heteronormative AF. Let's ramp up the diversity like yesterday. And so I need to let, you know, the rest of the gaming industry, AAA gaming industry, catch up.
It's just like I don't know. I think that Sony Santa Monica is a studio that should be able to make those kind of decisions and say, like, consequences be damned, because people are going to play these games anyway, right? Like, I do think it's important for these bigger studios to be making these choices and to not say fuck the gamers, but a little bit say fuck the gamers. Like, if you want to play this game, you're going to play it, and you're going to deal with the fact that we put this stuff in here that maybe makes you mad. You know, because even these folks who are like pissy about Angrboda, like, they're still going to fucking play this game. And smaller independent developers who are trying to make their games more queer and make their games more diverse, they don't have that same pull in the industry, and they're doing it with a lot more risk to themselves. So it does feel like these giants of the gaming industry should be taking bigger and more dramatic steps. But you know, they've got all the penny pinchers in the mix too, and they don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah. And like, that's part of it too, is for me, like the actress playing Angrboda, I think her name is Laia de Leon Hayes. She's 17 years old. She's half Filipina, half Black. So Filipina representation. Whoa. But like, I think the fact that she's like basically the only Black person in this game, and already like all these fans are like rearing their ugly heads and pushing back, and it just feels like this is why we need more, because it shouldn't fall on this one 17-year-old girl, all of this hate and vitriol and misplaced like anger or whatever that is like this is such an amazing career opportunity for her. It's also just an amazing addition to like the God of War, like, you know, cast and of characters. And like, I'm excited to have this character. And it's just like, I don't know. It just feels unfair that she has to carry the weight of being the first Black person to be in God of War, like in a visible way. Like, I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know. I think lately too, I think I've been seeing a lot of hate rising online, like just with all the hate raids happening on Twitch, and just the kind of like, I just feel like these studios are doing the bare minimum. And then they're also kind of just like, they think adding one Black person is like fixing their diversity issues, when like it's so much deeper than that. And they need to like be building it in from the ground up. I also don't want to undercut, like, I'm not saying that this character exists just as a Band-Aid. Like, I want to give full recognition to this character's like autonomy and like their importance being part of the story. I don't want to undercut that at all. I just think it's a scary place being a visible person of color in a AAA video game, and for a 17-year-old actress to be put in this role, and having to be the one face of representation in this game, knowing that the audience is going to have a lot of heavy reactions in a lot of ways. I don't know. It's
just like what are the safety mechanisms that are going in place?
Yeah.
I don't know. The problem is that there's not enough of it, and so then, and by it I mean diversity. I shouldn't say just it. There isn't enough diverse representation in mainstream games. Period. And so because of that, the folks that do get represented, a lot of weight gets put on their shoulders that is not fair or appropriate to them. And that weight comes in many different forms. It comes in the hate campaigns. It comes in the tokenization, the feeling that like that one actor, actress, or individual or character has to represent or stand for all the experiences that fall under that particular identity. It's uncarryable by any individual character, story, actor, period. It's not sustainable. We have to have these things presented more frequently, and it needs to be multiple characters in this game. It needs to be stories that are focusing on these topics. I do have some optimism that we are getting there, but I agree. It is not happening fast enough. And so as we take these baby steps, really, it is a baby step, and it's not where we should be, but that's what it is. If you are going to take this baby step, what are you as Santa Monica Studio, as Sony, the owner of this studio, what are y'all doing to ensure that the folks that you are putting out there are being protected? Because the internet is unfortunately a very dangerous fucking place these days. But we're definitely super excited about the body diversity and like ethnic diversity, cultural diversity in the new God of War game. I'm excited for the doggos. There's sled dogs.
There's sled dogs. We're just we love these games, right? So that's why we're talking about them so much, because we love them. We're very excited. Let's talk about something else.
What are you playing right now, Spencer?
So I'm playing a little game called Psychonauts 2, which we talked a little bit about in our last episode. We were both playing Lake, a game where you move home from your high-powered tech job to be a mail person for like 2 weeks, which I am excited to talk to you more about because you actually finished.
Yes.
But there was like a big game-breaking bug that happens about like halfway through the game. Unfortunately, it took the devs a little time to fix it, and so I kind of just started playing a different game in the meantime, and then totally got distracted. But I've been playing Psychonauts 2. Really, it's a platformer. You're a spy who jumps into people's minds to like explore their psyches and help them fix their emotional problems. And I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about it. I think it's really a great, like, I love having the Xbox Series X and Game Pass. I can just like download it and play it. It's been really fun and satisfying to play. And I think playing Psychonauts 2, which was Double Fine, and a sequel to the 2005 original Psychonauts, and then also playing Ratchet and Clank recently from Insomniac, another kind of revival of a beloved early aughts title. I'm just struck by how the real visual diversity it brings to the gaming experience. Like, I feel like these next gen consoles, a lot of the big titles have been focused on hyper realistic graphics, and just the way that these games kind of bring back really distinct, stylized, more cartoony art styles, and like the console's graphic capabilities like really, really shine. Like the level design in Psychonauts 2 is wacky and surreal and incredible, and it's just like the textures and the colors and the shapes of things and the physics, like it's all just, it comes together in a really visually satisfying way.
The detail in the variety of locations as well. I've been playing Psychonauts 2 a bit as well. I think we're in a similar section of the game. but yeah, just the amount of different locales that you can find yourself in is really impressive. Like the number of like maps they must have developed and the visual distinction of each of those locations, I was really impressed by.
Yeah, and just like very seamless transitions. Like the portal design is beautiful, and like you never feel like you're reaching the end of a level. Like every time you pass through a door, like you can, I don't know how to describe this, but it's like you can turn the camera and kind of see the entire world inside of the door that you're passing through, and it adds so much depth to the games. Like to the game, like I don't know, it's beautifully done. I hope to see more kind of visually experimental games as a result of these kinds of titles, like not just hyper realistic human faces, but kind of really like these cartoon styles, and can just be really dynamic and expressive and lush.
I'm personally not crazy about the character design.
And Psychonauts too.
Yeah. and I find that to be like a weaker aspect of it. I know that they're pulling from, a lot of the characters were in the original 2005 game. And so they're trying to capture them and bring them into the modern era. But a lot of them feel intentionally kind of like ugly.
Yeah, it's very 2005 and I don't know, it's almost like Cat Dog or Courage.
Yeah, it feels like Nickelodeon early Cartoon Network.
Rocket Power.
It's meant to be like a little bit off-putting.
Yeah.
So I don't love the character design, but I understand I think they nailed the aesthetic they were going for. It's just not an aesthetic that I personally love.
It's like a 60s noir, like almost like, kind of wacky. Meets Looney Tunes.
Yep. Definitely. Capitalize. It's hitting all that. Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, I want to talk about Lake, because this game was such a unique thing, and also is one that resonated with the both of us. So why don't tell us about Lake, Jamie?
Sure. So Lake came out to Xbox and PC September 1st. It's developed by Gamious, I think is how you say it. Gamious. They're from the Netherlands. They're independent game developer. The game itself is, as Spencer referenced before, you play I think she's supposed to be 40 years old, woman named Meredith, who, and the game is set in is it the 90s or the 80s?
80s, like 89.
80s. There you go. So late 80s. And Meredith is a developer is a software developer. And she's a workaholic, is what they set up very quickly from the beginning. Like, she's basically spends all of her time working. Crunching, yeah. And they make it really clear that, like, her boss kind of, like, takes advantage of that a little bit. He's got a little bit of, like, dude bro energy. You don't ever see him, but you talk to him on the phone at several points. And he very much encourages her overwork and kind of takes advantage of it, and uses her hard work to advance his own career. The story premise doesn't really make a ton of sense, but basically she's taken a 2-week vacation from her job as a programmer to go back to her hometown, Providence Oaks, Oregon, which is a small town on a lake. Thus the name of the game, Lake. And her father has just retired from the postal service there. He was the mail person for many years in Providence Oaks. And so, having just retired, him and her mother are on a vacation in Florida, and they have not found a replacement yet to replace him as the mail person. And so she is taking a 2-week vacation from her actual job to come be the mail person in Providence Oaks for 2 weeks while they look for another person to hire.
What, you think mail peopling is easy?
No, I don't think it's easy, but I just don't think that the mail service is a government organization. I don't think they would let a random person just come in and deliver the mail for 2 weeks to cover, even if it is the previous mail person's daughter. So, and also the idea that you would take a 2-week vacation from your job to go like deliver mail for 2 weeks is kind of hilarious, but also aligns with the character that they create for Meredith, which so in the game, you're seeing cutscenes and making dialogue decisions around the story. Usually you're presented with 2, sometimes 3 options of how to respond to